You're watching Force 13's live streaming service.
And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 8th, live. Well, here we are. A lot is going on around the wide world of tropics today with Typhoon Chanthu, which explosively intensified in the last 24 hours. Conson, that is a tropical storm over the Philippines. Larry is still a Category 3 hurricane, and 15E now exists in the Eastern Pacific, so all the basins except for the North Indian Ocean have activity. It's day 100 of Atlantic hurricane season. There's Larry there as a Category 3. Not shown here, but we have just upgraded 91L to a 50% chance. This was made after I had started exporting this, so it didn't have time to catch on here, but this is now a 50% chance for 91L. It's day 116 of Eastern Pacific hurricane season. There's 15E there, expected to become a hurricane, a short-lived one at that, and then of course there's also a 10% area of interest way down there at around 90 degrees west, so probably not going to be seeing too much development from that one. In the Western Pacific, you can see Typhoon Chanthu, winds of 145 miles an hour currently, and then of course Tropical Storm Conson. Both of these pose future land threats, so of course Conson is not done exactly in the Philippines. Chantu has quite a bit of room to go. And the North Indian Ocean, here is what we're looking at. Nothing much going on, and nothing really for the next month before the second peak of season returns over here. So in the meantime, we're looking at a relatively quiet basin here. So with that said, here's the Atlantic satellite imagery. You can quite clearly see Larry there, which has been continuing to power on the last few days. I think this is now the fourth day that it has stayed a Category 3 hurricane without changing category. At least we downgraded the Category 4 part that we had. And of course 91L has a 50% chance of development now. In the Eastern Pacific, you can see 15E there getting itself better organized, expected to become a minimal hurricane as it passes to the west of Baja before curving westward and pretty much dying by the beginning of next week. And in the Western Pacific, you can see the quite small but fierce Chantu there. Pinhole eye definitely able to be seen. And in Conson, it is not exactly looking as good as it did yesterday, as it has been traversing through the Philippine Islands. But it still remains a pretty good tropical storm with winds of around 60 to 65 miles an hour at this time. Moving it over to the northern hemisphere, or northern Indian Ocean. This is still the northern hemisphere, of course. You can see that we've been looking at the monsoonal activity continuing across, although there seems to be more of that monsoonal activity going on in the Arabian Sea than what we're used to seeing, so that is quite the sight there. And then we've got everything zoomed into Chantu, which is our main priority, along with Conson today, as we look at both of the impacts that these storms will have, especially to the Luzon Straits in Taiwan and China that need to be watching the storm closely. The Hainan Peninsula needs to be watching out for Conson as well. So some severe land threats that we're going to be looking at here. And looking at the Eastern Pacific sea surface temperatures, they look like this. 28 to 29 degrees Celsius for much of the tropical parts of the basin, although we're starting to see more of those temperatures drop to 27. The Gulf of Mexico remains around 30 degrees in the areas that Ida and Grace did not go through. Western Caribbean looks to be getting hotter, and other than that, the tropical Atlantic remains around 27 to 29 degrees Celsius. So the tropics, of course, get cooler as you head more north. Moving over to the North Indian Ocean, we're starting to see those 30 degrees Celsius in the Bay of Bengal slowly expand. Other than that, it remains around 28 to 29. In the Arabian Sea, it remains around 28, although those temperatures drops off significantly as you head westwards. And in the Philippine Sea and South China Sea, those temperatures remain extremely warm, especially where Conson and Chantu will be tracking. Those temperatures are going to be around 29 to 30 degrees Celsius for almost its entire life that it's going to be in the water. So definitely some really good temperatures that these two systems will be in. Definitely going to be significant storms, to say the least. Here are the sea surface temperatures. The Western Pacific is practically above average throughout the entirety of the basin. And the Atlantic, it's the same story, except the little pocket of areas that is a little bit below average from Ida still. And of course, we're seeing those La Nina conditions develop. So, with that said, here is the imagery on Chantu here. I'm going to see if I can get it to loop real quick. There we go. And you can see its progress over the last few hours here, and it's definitely mesmerizing with its pinhole eye. And it's just definitely something we did not expect to see, especially considering the fact that this got named 23 hours ago at this point. And needless to say, after going through a typhoonless August, which was the first time that we had such a occurrence since post-World War II, it's just definitely a wake-up call to remember that the Western Pacific season is still ongoing, no matter what happens in terms of its inactivity. Joining me tonight, we have a very small crew, just 3 of us tonight, between Christian, Jonesy, and me presenting tonight, Xavier Burns. But yeah, needless to say, we are devoted to covering it, even without the array of people that we normally have, and I'm pretty sure we've all been looking at this in shock. Christian, we'll start off with you. What are your thoughts on what we've been seeing with Chantu over the last 24 hours?
I I I I don't even know what to think, to be completely honest. It's just uh it's just basically gone kaboom.
And Jonesy, what are your thoughts on this storm?
Well, Chantu's been interesting, to say the least. Excuse me. My sleep schedule was a bit messed up, so I went to sleep when it was still daylight over there, and it was becoming daytime over here in the States. Went to sleep about 5 a.m. We had a tropical storm. Forget what the speed was at that. Probably about about 40 knots or so, or 50 knots, or 60. And I get on Discord at about 3 o'clock, and we have a Cat 4. Kind of reminds me of the shades of Ida's explosive intensification from when me and you had the graveyard shift a couple weeks ago, Xavier. But still, Chantu's intensification has definitely been very, very impressive.
Indeed, and for those wondering what we have it at as of right now, from the Zero Z fix, which came out about 9 minutes ago, we now have it with winds of 145 miles an hour. The pressure has gone down 2 millibars since the video update that I did earlier, 937 millibars at this time. Just to go overview the other storms that we have and their intensities, Conson, 65 miles an hour under pressure, 991 millibars. 15E, 35 miles an hour with a pressure of 1007 millibars, and 91L, 35 miles an hour and a pressure of 1011 millibars, 50% chance of formation, and Larry is still holding on to Cat 3 as a 115 mile an hour storm with a pressure of 965 millibars. So that is basically the latest on what we have on everything right now. And yeah, if you want my personal thoughts, I went to bed relatively early. I've been trying to fix my sleep schedule since that Ida shift there. That pretty much screwed me up big time in terms of how late I went. So I went earlier last night at around midnight Eastern, which was still, of course, well into the morning hours out there. And by that point, it was still looking rather new to everything. You know, had a pretty good cloud banding feature trying to get itself started up, but nothing that I would have suspected to become anything serious. I woke up, and the first thing I see when I'm putting in the plan of the day is a ping, and I basically ask whether I know what Chantu's doing. I'm like, okay, maybe it's a Cat 1. And the first thing that I see is the fact that it's got a pinhole eye and is probably a major at that point. So it's been quite the day here. Watching the Joint Typhoon Warning Center make the overrides and just watching this just intensify so fast. In terms of our forecast, we don't forecast this to become a Category 5 at this time. We're not ruling it out that it could. We're just saying that it's a little bit uncertain as to the forecast track of the system. I explained it in a way during the video update that I did earlier. It's that back when this had recently become a Category 4, the intensity models were all over the place, but none of them were at the level that we were, so the models have been stuck having to play catch-up with this. And pretty much Chantu's just blown all the models apart, really, with how fast it's strengthened over the last 24 hours. So this is definitely a shocking sight to see, especially after how long it's been since a storm this intense in the Western Pacific. Of course, we haven't had a major typhoon here since Infa, which would make this the third of the year behind Surrogate's the first one. We all know what that did. So this is going to be something to watch for sure. I will pull up the cone on this. Give me a second. And there we go. There is our latest cone, or, well, the Joint Typhoon Warning Center's latest cone on this system, which currently has it going up to 155 miles an hour. On what appears to be the first occasion, and then the second peak, 150 miles an hour. So both would still classify as a super typhoon on that side of things. It just wouldn't be a Category 5 on that aspect. But it looks like it could be passing relatively close to some of the Luzon Straits or southern Taiwan, which could receive a really big lashing out of this, especially the southern tip of Taiwan. So definitely something to be watching there. And of course, we are looking at a potential China landfall as either a high-end Category 1 or a low-end Category 2. So very serious situation we're looking at here. And of course, while we are at the subject, we can get up Conson here too. This is the latest cone on Conson. It's expected to continue weakening a little bit more as it continues to progress through the Philippines. Although as soon as it exits out, it's expected to reach a more favorable environment again, and it is likely that it does steadily strengthen back as it gets itself better organized again. And they could be looking at a typhoon approaching the southern Hainan Peninsula by the 12th, which of course would be 5 days from now. That would put us, I believe, to Saturday. So we could be looking at two typhoons making their own land threats in the next 5 days. So some serious situations going on here. We're going to be trying to track both as we get further. But if you look at the difference between the Saturday points here, give me a second.
Actually, the 12th takes us to I just remember the 12th takes us to Sunday, as I know that because the 12th is the day before my birthday, and my birthday's on Monday, so the 12th is on Sunday.
Yeah, that would be
So
Sunday.
we're up to Sunday, yeah.
Alright, as I was saying, but yeah, that would be Sunday. But as you can really tell, we had a landfall pretty much for the southern Hainan Peninsula on the 12th over here with Conson, and at the same time, we could be looking at the landfall near China on the 12th. So we're looking at a potential double landfall situation here, both at typhoon intensity, Category 1 if the current forecast holds here, and a Category 2 or high-end 1 over here. And it definitely looks like Chantu will not be a small system forever. It is going to expand in size. So while it may be small for now, don't let that intimidate you. This is going to get larger, and of course this is going to bring with it some significant rainfall impacts. The
thing I'm going to point out on both cones is I've noticed a more from 2 days ago when I was doing up late to check out Conson, and then last night up late to watch Conson and Chantu. I've noticed that the cones on both systems have been moving more south and more southern throughout the last few days. I remember 2 days ago we were talking the Joint Typhoon Warning Center's cone on Chantu when it was still TD19W was having it come in up by Taipei, which is on the north side of Taiwan. Then yesterday it had a southeastern Taiwan landfall. Now that cone looks to be missing a landfall completely, maybe just edging on that southern tip there. But there has been a more and more southward track of not only Chantu, but also Conson, because I was noticing Conson's cone has also been moving southern. It was supposed to come into China before that, the Hainan Peninsula there, that little island there. Now it's coming in on the south side of the Hainan Peninsula. Possibly could miss that peninsula completely and go towards Vietnam. So those in Vietnam should be watching what Conson does, because if it does miss the Hainan Peninsula, we could be talking about an early to midweek landfall of Conson in Vietnam next week.
Yeah, indeed, and pretty much, I've got the satellite imagery, of course, for Conson in the background there too, and that's not the only land threat, because basically every system that we have active right now is a threat to land in its own way. In terms of what we're dealing with, Larry is not on its own either, because Larry is, of course, a land threat as well. We have Bermuda under a tropical storm watch currently. That is a Category 3 typhoon right now. But what's also interesting is that Bermuda is not the only area that could be seeing impacts out of this, especially with the hurricane force winds. Newfoundland is in the cone, and that's not usually something that I have to say often, especially because of the fact that you typically see storms pretty much going completely extratropical, and by that point losing their hurricane force winds. But Larry has been quite the storm so far, already attaining Category 3 for 4 days now. And it looks like this weakening trend is going to be relatively slow.
Yes, so Larry has had Newfoundland cone for a couple days now. It wasn't until yesterday that it was confirmed that it would turn extratropical before reaching up there. It looks to be, based on the 8 p.m. cone, they have it still as a hurricane, still tropical, about the same point as Cape Cod, going northward. So that's going to be something to look at, or New York City. It would turn extratropical, then it's still going to still have hurricane force as it's extratropical. Once it's between 50 and 55 degrees north, that's something you don't really see often. And I noticed this last night, and this is something you don't see often, and it's still there now. Greenland is actually coned as well. You rarely see Greenland coned, and that's as a extratropical tropical storm, but still a strong tropical storm as well at that point. So you rarely see Greenland coned. As Xavier said, you don't really see. It's rare that you see Newfoundland coned, because that's more north in Atlantic Canada than Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island. It's even rarer to see Greenland coned.
Oh, and I'm going to be mentioning this isn't a typhoon because you briefly called it a typhoon there.
Oh, then we both called it a typhoon because you called it one as well. And I corrected you with hurricane.
I think we're just busy with the fact that the Western Pacific is just rampantly firing off the charts right now, and the fact that Larry just kind of exists in the way right now in terms of everything, because everything's just trying to threaten land at this point.
Yeah.
Alright.
And also, it's not mentioned in our fix, but we were having rumbles about it. We were talking about it. ATCF, they actually released it about 40 to 45 minutes before 0Z, and usually the rest of the 0Z fixes are not going to come in until after the TWB is over. But we now have Invest 96W in the Western Pacific, located at 12.6 degrees north, 140.5 degrees east. I threw that into Google Maps. It was telling me that was west of Guam. They currently have it as 15 knots and a pressure of 1,008. So there is a new Invest out there in the Western Pacific. We do not have it marked at this time. We were debating on if we were going to mark it. If we were to give percentages, we would probably be going with 0.10 or 0.20 on that. But it's in the area over by Guam, and it's 4.3 degrees south and exactly 7 degrees east of Chantu. So Chantu is probably going to cause that not to form, but it's still a new Invest out there in the West Pacific.
We're going to ignore the fact that you just called Chantu a hurricane there. Anyways, moving on from that. Oh dear goodness, there is too many things going on. I mean, it's the habit of what happens when you go into September. You go in, and then there's just all these names for different parts of the world, and then you just kind of get jumbled because everything's hitting land, and then everything just becomes the same after a while. Especially with what we're dealing with here, everything's being a land threat. And if we thought that Larry was enough, no, we don't, because Invest 91L is a thing, and that now has a 50% chance of becoming something before it makes landfall in Florida. 50% in 2 days, 50% in 5. So, of course, we're not alone there. And needless to say, that's not the only thing active, because we also have 15E that's now a thing. And needless to say, that is going to be making a potential close pass near the Baja California Peninsula before it dies out on Sunday. So it's going to be a short-lived storm, but it could still bring some impacts. Definitely looks like this is a decent-sized storm that we're going to be dealing with here. So that will be something to watch as well. Of course, the next name in the East Pack is Olaf, so I'm pretty sure this will likely be more memed than anything. But yeah, there you go. You can see the forecast cone for these two systems in the more interactive perspective of things. Of course, the pink on this one would denote the super typhoon strength. The orange would denote, or at least the red colors would denote the violent typhoon category, which is basically, you know, category 4. And then as it weakens, you can see it's slowly becoming more orange. But needless to say, yeah, this is definitely going to be pretty significant typhoons that we're dealing with here. With the cones of uncertainty relatively wide for both systems here. Because on the southern end of the cone, if this goes on the complete southern end, keep in mind the cone is where the southern, or at least the center of the storm could track. On the southern side, it could make landfall in the Philippines still. There is still that slight off chance possibility it does so, near Apari specifically. This cone is just so ever slightly south of the last cone. As the Luzon Strait of Itbayat was under the direct cone of this. But it definitely looks like they're going to be seeing the eyewall out no matter what outcome this does get, considering the fact that this is supposed to be 150 miles an hour over them. So if you do live near Itbayat or Basco or know anyone that lives near there, they definitely probably should be evacuating off the island if they can. But on the northern end of the cone, you can see that the entirety of Taiwan is under the cone. So basically, this could end up making a northward turn. So Taipei, even though you're way north of where the center currently is in terms of the cone, you're still in the cone. And then China becomes a much more of an unpredictability in terms of where this can make landfall. Considering this can make landfall anywhere between Kangnan and near Hong Kong. Hong Kong is in the cone as well for this system. And keep in mind, the storm is expected to expand in size, as I mentioned earlier. So while it may be very small right now, let me measure the size of this thing. Let's see here. So, judging by the looks of things, it's only about 270 miles wide, which isn't exactly that much when it comes to a tropical system. I know when I did the video update earlier, tropical storm force winds were only extending outwards to about 50 or 60 miles away from the center. Might be slightly up now, but either way, that's still a relatively small storm to be talking about. And just for the kicks, if you want to measure the visible eye there, it's really small. I mean, we're only talking about an 8-mile, about an 8-mile wide eye here.
Pinhole.
It looks to be more or less 9, but still. It's an extremely small eye that we've got here. That's what makes it, of course, that pinhole classification there.
Compared to Larry's eye, which I think at its greatest peak was like 70 miles.
Yes.
From what I heard. So that's definitely a pinhole. If you want to show over by Guam, the thunderstorms to the west of Guam, or the area over by Guam, that's where they're having 96. That's where they say 96W is. So right behind Chantu, but is to the west of Guam. As I said, 4.3 degrees south and 7 degrees east of Typhoon Chanthu.
Yep, I've zoomed it in into the on the map of where that purple dot that you see in the center, which happens to be right near the track of where Chantu first began, is 96W. Not really too far. I need to see how close this is to the beginning of Chantu's track, because that's awfully close. Let's see here. Okay, so interestingly enough, 96W's initial position is 58 miles away from Chantu's initial position at when it first started out.
That's pretty close. So the 0Z on ATCF for 91L has come in. Pressure has gone down from 1011 to 1010 from 18Z, and they brought the knots up from 20 knots to 25 knots. So now they're saying 30 miles an hour and a pressure of 1010.
So that's something we're going to be looking at here. If you have any questions, we're going to be devoting the next half hour to some of those questions, as we have pretty much explained at least the basics of what you guys need to know on all 4 systems currently active, as well as the invest that we currently have in place. There's no areas of interest at this point that haven't really been discussed that need to, considering the fact that that Eastern Pacific thing is way too far out to really talk about details or anything. And that was really the only one that wasn't invested at this point. So, if you have any questions, feel free to tag us at Force13. That will pop up our name in orange, and that will give us the ability to see your messages. Our first question was, has Pegasa issued any warnings for Chantu?
Yes, they've been doing advisories on Chantu. At this time, I don't think there's any signal warnings on Chantu. I think all the signal warnings are on Conson. It's about 8 a.m. over there right now, so they could have done an advisory on Conson, but I think the next Chantu advisory is not going to be until about 11 a.m. Philippine time, which is going to be 11 p.m. here on the East Coast, so we're still about a couple hours away from the next advisory on Chantu. But they did give it. It is in the PAR, the Philippine Area of Responsibility. Chantu does have Pagasa name Kiko.
My internet is being really sad right now and not loading up the wind signals for this storm right now. This is fun. I guess it's going to slowly pop up on your screen here in the most slowest fashion, and I guess that just gives it away. I don't have to go scroll down any further because there are no tropical cyclone wind signals currently in effect for Chantu. So we can immediately go off that screen now, thankfully, before it loads anymore and takes our time even further.
Yeah, it's taking a while for me. No wind signals are in effect for Chantu right now at this time. They do expect it to be. I do expect some to go for the Luzon Strait as it gets closer. Maybe northern Luzon as well. We'll have to wait and see. All the signal warnings are for Conson, which is Philippine name Jolena. That is currently loading in right now.
Yep, I have these already up. So as of right now, for Jelena or Conson, whatever you want to call it, basically there are Signal 2 warnings in effect for Occidental Mindoro, Oriental Mindoro, Marinduque, Quezon, Batangas, Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, Western Bulacan, Metro Manila, Pampanga, Bataan, Zambales, and Tarlac, as well as Lubang Island. Of course, if I pronounce any of these wrongs, I do apologize. And for the signal ones, those are for southern Oriental or Occidental and Oriental Mindoro there. There's also signal 1 for Brumblon, Caramines Sur, Caramines Norte, Polillo Island, Bulacan, Aurora, Nueva Ecija, the southern end of Nueva Vizcaya, Benguet, La Union, as well as Panganisan, or Panganisan. I'm sorry if I get that wrong. I probably butchered it, but that is basically what we're looking at for that. Will Chantu interact with Conson? Given the small size and the fact that they're going to be in 2 different places, probably not. Has Larry already reached its peak? Yes, it is probably going to be weakening at this point on.
Alright, so Pagasa, literally, they just issued this advisory with from what I've heard from people in the Philippines, they usually issue them late, but this has come out. This is the 8 a.m. advisory Philippine time. This is 8 p.m. here for us in the East Coast of America. They're saying maximum sustained winds is 95 kilometers per hour, pressure of 998. I'm going to have to transfer that to miles an hour real quick. So that is about 60 miles an hour, but they also use 10-minute winds, not the 1 minute. But they do have Conson as a tropical storm.
Well, I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Or a severe tropical storm. Yeah, I would too, especially because it made another landfall in the Philippines on, where is it? Marinduque. Excuse me if I butchered that. I apologize.
Another question. What do you think the chance for Chantu to become a super typhoon is? Given the fact that it's 145 miles an hour and super typhoon starts at 150, and the fact that it is likely going to continue intensifying or have two peaks as a super typhoon, I'd give it a 90. At least a 90%. Do you see another disturbance behind Chantu? That's 96W, but we only have that as a 10% chance of formation at this time. What is the biggest eye in the Atlantic? Good question. I wanna say Isabel, but I don't think it's Isabel at the same time.
I'll have to look that up. And for those wondering, next, and I was correct, next Pagasa update on Chantu will be at 11 a.m. Philippine time, as the current one is at 5 a.m. where they had it at a pressure of 970 and 150 kilometers an hour. But as we know, it's way stronger than that. The next Pagasa advisory will be at 11 a.m. or Philippine time, 11 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States. But yeah, I'm not sure what's the biggest eye. I'm going to have to guess with you and go with Isabel, but I will look that up. I'll hopefully have the answer before we go into the on this day.
Yep. Let's see here. What is your peak of Chantu? We have it at, going up to 155 miles an hour. Category 4. High end at that. Chances of going auxiliary in the Atlantic this year? I'd be dropping them slowly, given the fact that we haven't had too much of an active first start to September 1st. Of course, that could very well change. We'll see what happens. But I think it's still a little bit too early to say what's going to happen, given the fact we still have 9 names left in the Atlantic to go through before we can really get to the auxiliary list. Larry is so similar to 2001. Have you noticed yet? Personally, I don't think it's similar to Aaron 2001 in retrospect. You didn't have it in becoming a hurricane until it was east-southeast of Bermuda. And really, it didn't exactly form until it was already midway between the Cape Verde Islands and the Leeward Islands. And it only had a short life before it degenerated into a tropical storm, or tropical wave, I should say. So it really took a long time for it to get itself together, and when it did become a Category 3 finally, it only held that intensity for only a day. This has held its Category 3 intensity for 4 days. And then it made a very weird backward 7 in the Atlantic, pretty much went northwestwards, and then made a random curve to the eastwards, and then back northeastwards. So in terms of track similarities and intensity similarities, I definitely would not say that Aaron is a good analog or comparison to Larry here. Is Chantu 150 miles an hour yet? What are the chances of it right now? 145 is what we're going with. 150 looks to be a 90% chance. Let's see here. What is your peak? We already answered that. Let's see here. What do you think is the reason for the more southward track for both systems right now? I think it has something to do with the ridging and stuff. Pretty sure. I think it's been looking to go more south than initially expected, which is helping to make both systems go south. Kind of the habit when you have multiple systems, then you have a jet interaction that causes them to go southwards, but you know. What do you think? Okay, we keep getting the same questions. Can Larry become a superstorm? Doubt it. Would you say Larry can be compared to Teddy of last year? I don't really think that's another good comparison as well, considering the fact that Teddy was definitely interesting on its own. What we saw with Teddy was that it was a little, I guess you could say it was comparable to the time of the year that we had it on. But in terms of its track, we watched it really go northwestwards until it got towards Bermuda and then made a random curve towards it and then became extratropical before Nova Scotia. But this was a Nova Scotia landfall that we're talking about, not a Newfoundland like we're expected to be seeing. But yeah, I really wouldn't call this a comparison either to the fact that Teddy, of course, became the 4th largest tropical cyclone on record in the Atlantic. This is not expected to do such, so I really can't compare it. Will 91L become Mindy or a subtropical depression? Well, I don't even think that's the amount of possible scenarios there. With 91L, they said tropical or subtropical, so it all depends what happens there. But I can't exactly say. It's a 50-50 shot at the moment of whether it becomes a tropical cyclone or not. Do you think that there will be a 195-mile-an-hour typhoon this year? Hopefully not. We already had Surrogate get up to 190. There shouldn't be any more stronger ones than that, hopefully.
I thought Surrogate was 185.
Nope, it was 190.
Okay.
It was 190. Wow. So on the I question, can't find anything for individual basins. So it's not telling me for the Atlantic. I will tell you this. On record worldwide, the smallest tropical cyclone eye on record is Wilma with 2.3 miles. That's a really small pinhole. The biggest on record worldwide is Typhoon Carmen of 1960 and Typhoon Winnie of 1997 with a 230-mile wide eye. It does not tell me anything. Unfortunately, I cannot find anything per basin, but that is what I found for eyes worldwide.
Let's see here. Trying to get through the questions here. What is the weirdest Atlantic hurricane that Force 13 has ever covered across the board, not just in terms of a singular category? I don't know. We've been doing Force 13 for what? This will be our 10th year, so pretty much goes up to the last 10 years. I think as of right now, at least personally for me, I think the weirdest storm was more than likely Paulette 2020 rings a bell. That was quite the interesting one. Leslie 2018 also gets an award for being extremely weird to track there. But in terms of anything besides that, I don't think so. I mean, 2021 has been quite the weird year. Claudette was quite the odd one. But I think that's
really... Sorry, that's really more of a question for Nathan.
Yeah, but he's not here tonight, so... I mean, I've only been in the project since 2019, so I can only go off the last 2 years, but, you know.
For me, that award goes to pretty much every North Atlantic storm this year except for Anna and Bill.
Well, Anna and Bill were their own things, but of course that's not what we're covering here today.
Yeah. That for the weirdest storms question, I stepped out of the room while the question was being asked. Yeah. In the Atlantic, it's been the year of weird storms. This is my first year in 413, so as a contributor, so definitely a lot of the storms, and it's been weird, the storms that we've had in the North Atlantic this year. I'll say. Definitely the weirdest out of the storms this year, though, track-wise in the North Atlantic, I'm going to go with Henri. Not because I got, 10 inches of rain from it. It's just where it formed and the direction that it took. It formed, northeast of Bermuda and went southwestward, turned and went due north into New England. So that's probably one of the weirdest tracks that I've seen in a while. And in my time here at Force 13, definitely the weirdest one that I've tracked.
Let's see here. Continuing through the questions that we have, is Chantu doing the same as Goni? No. We're just gonna leave it right
No.
there. That year Olaf can experience summer. Oh, I don't know what you mean by that, but okay.
That's some kind of Frozen reference.
Force 13, would you be happy if your name got onto a storm in the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific? Well, I think that's already happened on my end twice, at least.
Not
Yeah,
happened for me.
you're yeah, Xavier, you're pretty much on the naming list every other year for the Eastern Pacific. For my first name, I'm not sure if it's been used in the North Atlantic or if it's been used elsewhere. That I'm gonna have to take a look at.
I don't think my name's been used like at all.
That's what I can do some research on real quick.
We're going to continue answering the questions. What is the most memorable storm so far for you in the Western Pacific season? I guess it would mean this year. Definitely, if you had to pick two, Surrey and Nympha.
Surrogate is definitely one for me.
For this year?
For this year, at least.
And of course, we will remember Napartak for not being a tropical cyclone, of course.
Yes, and
Napartak,
Sergey was
yes.
interesting. Napartak was a tropical cyclone. That wasn't a tropical cyclone. That happened during the Olympics. And obviously, we're all, we're waiting on that good old Central Pacific name, which we'll be waiting on what joke you have in store for us later on tonight.
Oh no.
We'll see what happens with that. Of course, it might be. We're going to be pushing it a little bit later past normal. We're going to be going with an hour and a half truck weather bulletin rather than the standard 1 hour, just because of the fact that there's a lot of questions, a lot of storms active, and we do want to try to get everything covered on that aspect.
Let me take a look at Recon on Larry because it leaked. There's actually Recon in Larry right now. They did do an eye pass. They have a pressure of 967, so it has come up. As of SFMRs, looks like they're preparing to do a northeast to southwest run. In the northwestern quadrant, I saw flight levels of 99 with SFMRs of 87. In the southeastern quadrant, let's see what we got. Give me 1 second. Southeastern quadrant, looks like we peaked flight level at 89 with SFMRs of 71. So definitely Larry is on the weakening trend. We'll see what we see in the northeast to southwest pass. We will probably, since we're going till 30 past the next hour, we'll probably get that recon data in, and that will determine if they're going to keep it at 115 at 11 or if they're going to bring it down to 110 or even 105, 100 at 11 p.m., which is the next full advisory. At this point, it's looking like for Larry, we're going to be seeing it exit major status at 11 p.m.
It will definitely be nice that we have one less major to track there. Let's see here. Conson right now bringing heavy intense rains here at Metro Manila, and it's somehow slow. Well, the system's rainfall could be comparable to Quetzana 2009. Let me see what that did real quick, because I don't remember that storm off the top of my head. After all, I didn't really track typhoon seasons until much later than 2009, of course. Let me see here. That did... Oh my, that was a pretty significant storm that did. Well, you see, Katana was a completely different storm, considering the fact that it legit formed east of the Philippines and just made a complete westward track through it. Conson is moving northwest through the Philippines, so I don't exactly think that it's comparable to such a storm. I don't know. I don't know how much rain you guys have seen over there. If you could tell me how much you've seen, then maybe that might have some inference to go off with. Do you think October, November will be active in the Atlantic or for this year? It's possible, given the fact that, of course, we do have a La Nina coming in, and typically those do favor seasons to go on a little bit later than what you normally expect. When should the North Indian Ocean be expected to become active again? Next month. Could Chantu undergo an eyewall replacement cycle soon? Definitely possible, especially with how small its eye is. If anyone else wants to comment on that. It's the whole reason that this makes the forecast so challenging is because of the fact that you have a pinhole eye. Typically those are very much prone to eyewall replacement cycles at some point. We saw this with Hagibis last year. It had an extraordinarily tiny eye, and eventually it underwent the eyewall replacement cycle, and of course its eye as a result got larger. So we typically see that with pinhole eyes. Small storms at the same time are harder to forecast because they're more prone to quick intensity changes. And we basically watched that be demonstrated with the explosive intensification that we saw over the last 24 hours with this system. So that's what's helping to make a little bit of a challenging forecast. Otherwise, we probably would have been forecasting a little bit stronger than what we currently are, but I really wouldn't call this anything like, Goni or anything like that, because Goni was an extremely strong storm, 195 miles an hour, at least officially, so we are still 50 plus away from that, so we really can't make comparisons to that level, especially when Goni was a completely different storm that had completely different impacts to the ones we will be seeing with Chantu here. So that is something that you gotta keep that in mind there. How many eyewall replacement cycles has Larry been through since it loves its eyewall replacement cycles? Jonesy, do you happen to know the answer? Because I know it's at least 4. Jonesy seems to not be with us anymore. I'm
sorry, I just got back. What's up?
It's like, do you know how many eyewall replacement cycles that Larry's been through at this point?
A lot. That's all I'll say. I don't know the exact number.
Oh, well, so let's see here. What is the chance of this becoming a Cat 5? I really can't say. It's a higher than normal chance, of course, given the fact that it's in pretty good conditions and the fact that it's already 145 miles an hour. But in terms of its actual probability of becoming a Cat 5, it's extremely uncertain. It all depends on whether it goes through an eyewall replacement cycle soon, what condition it taps to for its second peak. I honestly don't know. Is there a noticeable chance of Ida being upgraded to a Cat 5 next year? Not really. Not really at all.
Alright, so the rest of the 0Zs are in. Larry, for ATCF, we have 100 knot, 967. So that's not in agreement with the NHC, but maybe the NHC is overriding their pressure. But we know Recon found 965 pressure. 15E is 30 knots, 1007 is the pressure there. I apologize if Discord sounds just came through my mic there. Conson is 55 knots, 992. I'm not sure if that's stronger or weaker. I think it's stronger, actually. I'm going to have to check. And Chantu, 0Z, we have 120, 942 on 18 ATCF.
If that's the case, that would imply weakening for Chantu because it was 125 knots. A pressure of 937.
Yeah, if that's the case, maybe... Well, the CDO is going into more of an egg shape. If that is the case, maybe we're seeing the eyewall replacement cycle right now.
Well, that is a development. Looks like the Joint Typhoon Warning Center will be going lower at their next advisory, peaking it down to 140 miles an hour. So that is interesting.
JPWC, according to what I'm seeing in discussions, is down to T6 on Chantu.
We had a question. Do you agree with Iota being downgraded to Cat 4? We did downgrade it to a Cat 4 as well, so that is a change that we did make.
Let me just scroll up because I took a photo. Oh, I have to scroll up in the public server. I can let you know what we had, what ATCF had at 18Z, because, as I said, 96W was released about 45 minutes before 0Z, so I can see what 18Z ATCF had.
Yeah, because if that's the current case, that would mean that Chantu would have weakened 5 miles an hour, and the pressure would have gone up 5 millibars. Someone asked, how big is Larry's wind field currently? I can get that up, real quick.
Okay, so, before you go ahead there, Larry held from 18Z to 0Z, Conson held, 15E held. As we know, 91L went up 5 knots and down 1. Chantu at 18Z was 125 knots, 937. So yes, it went down 5 knots and the pressure went up 5 knots.
You mean 5
Right.
millibars?
Oh, sorry, yes, millibars. That's what I meant.
I've got Larry Winfield's up.
I already had it before, though.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, as of right now, it has a relatively large wind field, 160 nautical miles to the northeast, 160 nautical miles to the southeast, 120 to the southwest, and 140 to the northwest. Those hurricane force winds extend 60 nautical miles to the northeast, 50 to the southeast and northwest, and 40 to the southwest. So that is what we're seeing with that. And I believe it's expected to remain getting a little bit larger, expected to at one point have winds that go 200 nautical miles to the southeast. So Larry is not at its maximum size yet, but it will not be as large as, of course, Teddy. Someone asked 17E has formed. Well, we kind of need to get through 16E first, but 15E did form today. Let's see here. Can the southwestern monsoon expand Typhoon Chanthu's size? I mean, it's already supposed to expand as it is, so I don't know what else. I mean, bigger than what it already is expected to get to, because it's already supposed to get larger. Could that ban on microwave to its west be responsible for the possible eyewall replacement cycle, if anyone's looking at that? Because I can't exactly at the moment. We'll see if we get a response to that one, but if that is the case, then that's a possibility. Christian, getting feedback on you from your end. How large is Hurricane Larry's eye? It's about 40 to 50 miles wide at the moment. Is Larry's eye still 94 mile, or is it smaller? No, it's not even close to 94 miles wide. Just another reminder, if you have any more questions, keep on giving us those tags. We are going a half hour longer than normal, just that way we can make sure that any questions you have are going to be answered. Future live events are going to be planned all throughout the week, given the fact that this is multiple significant threats that we're going to be tracking here. As well as storm updates, those will be coming up frequently. The second storm update on Chantu will be coming overnight. I do believe we do have another Conson one coming in about 2 hours, as long as everything in terms of this timing goes right. So that is what we've got in terms of how we'll be tracking the storms this week. But needless to say, that would be there will be a lot. Recon said Larry's eye was over 90 miles at one point. Wouldn't doubt that. The system heading towards Florida has a 50% chance of formation, right? Yup. Larry's cone looks like it has shifted west. Is that correct?
That's an intermediate cone, so I'm not sure at this time. Here's interesting. So, as they're moving towards the northeast quadrant, they ran into flight level winds of 102 knots, but the SFMRs in that area only peaked at 59 knots. So that's interesting. On Larry. As I've been seeing stuff come from the public server, and there's been talks of discussion. I'm gonna go check out Chantu's eye right now to see this for myself. Supposedly, the eye is well into the positives, and I need to verify that for myself right now. So I will get back to you on that as soon as I find that out real quick.
And Christian, just so that way we can hear you a little bit more than we have so far, what do you think your advice is for those that are watching from the Luzon Straits in Taiwan at the moment, especially with the significant intensity that we could be seeing this approach the area with?
Okay, before you go, Christian, they're not kidding. That worries me. 17 degrees Celsius in the eye of Chantu.
Well, can I speak yet?
You can go. I'm gonna do some more digging around the eye.
Right. Well, first and foremost, pay attention to your local government officials, because again, they're the officials. You should really follow their advice, and just keep an eye out. Start your preparations if you're in the cone, and um, yeah, this is not a situation to be taken lightly. This is not a joke. Um, start I start your preparations, listen to your local office for guidance on what to do in an emergency, and that's all I can really offer at this time. I'm sure there's a few things I missed out.
Yeah, and if you're on the Luzon Straits, if there's a way to evacuate, especially with how small those islands are, I think this would be the time where you consider that option, considering the fact this is expected to directly pass over some of the ones, like I said, Itbayat and Basco are some to note there as a super typhoon, and of course we get typically see storm surge way up there. So needless to say, that is something that you gotta be taking seriously if you live near those areas. The more southern you are in Taiwan, the more you need to be tracking this. Of course, all of Taiwan should be tracking this, considering the fact that at the current cone, tropical storm force winds are going to be going well into the entire southern half of Taiwan there. Even central Taiwan could get into some of those tropical storm force winds, so any northward shift would put even more of Taiwan in there. A southern shift would take it even closer to Hong Kong, which isn't expected to get tropical storm force winds at the moment. But of course, if we keep seeing tracks going towards the south, then of course we are going to be talking about more of a problem for areas like the northern end of the Philippines, like Apari, and more of an issue for areas like Hong Kong. So that is basically what we're looking at in terms of that aspect. Two systems worth watching between this storm and Conson, and of course, the central Philippines are already getting their lashing from Conson, and as right now, the current cone would bring some of those tropical storm force winds to the extreme northeastern aspect of the Philippines. Excuse me, there. But needless to say, this isn't something to take down lightly. If you are in China, at least in the cone of where you could be seeing those tropical storm force winds and higher, especially if you're in the third gradient there, where it has those pinkish colors denoting typhoon force winds. This is not something to take lightly. This is a significant typhoon. This is the biggest typhoon that we've had since Infa in terms of intensities. In fact, it's stronger than Infa, so this would actually be the most significant typhoon that we've had here since Surigay. So not something to take down lightly. We did this with Ida. That was 150 miles an hour, 5 knots higher than what we currently have it as. And needless to say, this you just can't take this lightly. If you are in the area that is expected to get hit with this, do not question its size. It's small now, but it is expected to get bigger. The rainfall, 8 to 16 inches, locally more as you get closer to the eyewall. So, needless to say, this is some relatively significant impacts we could be seeing. We don't have a CDPS for it yet, just because of the fact it's a little bit more than the denoted time that we have for landfalls, but I'm pretty sure we should be getting one by Thursday at the absolute latest. So, stay tuned for that one. Could this be like Dorian and wind speed intensification? Given the fact it's kind of leveled off right now, potentially weakened slightly according to what the ATCF has, which is usually what the JTWC runs with. I don't really think that this could be comparable to what we saw with Dorian there. Especially with the eyes being two completely different sizes between the two. You had a concentric eye with Dorian, and then with this one you have a pinhole eye, so two different eyes there. Are you glad you don't live in the Western Pacific? Well, there are, of course, some of our contributors that live there, so I don't really think that would be a good idea to ask us, because there are people who At least people on our team who do live in the path of this and must track it very closely.
Newest frame in. I'm looking at the eye. I'm seeing a lot more in the teens now. It's on the newest frame down to 16 Celsius based on what I'm using. One of the moderators in the public server was saying that the Himawari is only able to see half the eye, that satellite, and they found 19 degrees Celsius in the eye. That worries me. I think what we were seeing with the CDO, in where it was looking like an egg, was that probably brought it down to what ATF is saying, 129.42. But it's starting. If you look at that southwest part, it's starting to look like that's going. It's becoming a ring again. It looks like perfect circle, and we're starting to see it strengthen again, and that's what worries me. Honestly, there's been JTWC, ATCF, Best Track. There's been a lot of overrides. If it is getting stronger, I would not be surprised if we see another override coming up. We know the next JTWC advisory and the Picasa advisory are both coming at 3Z, 11 p.m. We may see if they hold the weight the next 2 hours or if we see an override. I know for Force 13, I'm going to check the Cyclone Fix channel. We have held at 125, not M 937, which is what JTWC had originally before it at 5 p.m. I'm going to be in agreement with that for what we are going estimate-wise, and I've been saying 125. On my personal analysis, I'm going to agree with 125 as well, but I could also, you could make the argument for 130. For 130 knots, from what I'm seeing now, there's people that are saying that this is like 135, 140, this is Cat 5. No, not yet. I want to see more strengthening out of this. But from what I'm seeing with the eye temperature, that's starting to worry me. What I'm seeing on the satellite, how it's losing that egg shape, that's starting to worry me. I really think that we're going to be seeing Chantu start to strengthen again to where I think you might see a JTWC ATCF override if JTWC is going to do an override. Like I said, the next advisory is in 2 hours, or should be in 2 hours. We're probably going to see an intermediate fix as well from the Cyclone Analyst team at 3Z. So what I'm seeing with Chantu is starting to worry me.
Yeah, definitely something to be looking at this point, and there is some people that are looking into this and saying that this definitely is not weaker than what we were initially expecting in the chat there. A question from CJ asking how long we're staying on. We're staying on until 30 past due to the significant situation that we're seeing with multiple storm systems here, so only 30 minutes longer than the typical one, but it allows us to get more live coverage out given the seriousness of the situation here. Is there another disturbance to the west pack besides Conson and Chantu? We already went over this. 96W that is located to the east, but it only has a 10% chance of formation at this time. But yeah, for those who are asking if this TWB is extended, it's only by 30 minutes. Okay, ignoring that question. Please try to keep the questions to stuff that isn't jokes, because this isn't really a joking matter. As much as we do have our events like Force 13 Sundays and all. Unfortunately, we're looking at a very serious situation for the Philippines, Taiwan, Luzon Strait especially. So definitely not a time to be messing around with this. Did you know that 17W was ex-Linda? 17. Oh yeah, 17W was. I don't know if it was the same mid-level circulation, especially if it traversed that far.
That would be pretty far if it did. I mean,
That would be pretty impressive.
We know Marty Mid-level was what was left over from Grace. I do know that. But that if 17W used to be its mid-level used to be what was Linda, then that would be impressive. Could 96W impact Chantu? Probably not. It'd be more Chantu impacting 96W, in my opinion. Recon update on Larry. They're starting to go into the northeast side of the storm now. They will probably be hitting the eyewall in a couple of minutes. Actually, they started heading in at 58. So they're probably in the eyewall now as we speak, or they will be in the next couple of minutes. We're gonna get the recon data probably out of the northeast quadrant before we go off the air. If we get another drop sun in the eye, that data I don't think we'll get before we go off the air. I will post what I see though in the North Atlantic chat. But right now, the main focus, the worrying focus, is Chantu. I hope with Larry's recon data, I hope they don't really find anything that warrants Cat 3. So this drops below down, so we can drop this below major. We have the one eye drop sun. I want to see the northeast quadrant. And if they don't have any Cat 3 wins, I'm probably gonna make the call on it that it's not a major anymore. I honestly. I hope to make that call, but which then that will shift the focus fully to only one major in the world, and that is the one that's looking very dangerous right now, and it's getting more and more dangerous by every frame, and that's Chantu. Which is now I'm starting to wonder that CDO that it was going through when it was becoming an egg originally. I'm wondering, what if that's the cause of the 120 not 942 that they went with ATCF at 0Z. But I'm also starting to wonder, was that CDO technically a eyewall replacement cycle? Was it a quick eyewall replacement cycle? If it was, and is that causing it to now get strengthened again? Because you don't really see, these 15, 16, 17, 19 degrees Celsius eyes with Cat 4s. You can, but you don't really see that a lot. And that's what's starting to make me worry about Chantu.
Yeah, for sure. We really don't want this to strengthen any further than it has. Gravely, the storm should just open up into a wave, but that's not how exactly physics works, and unfortunately, as much as we always say that, there's always the off chance that something could happen, these good sea surface temperatures will keep this system kicking for quite some long time, so I can hope for the best. You better be preparing for the worst, as we always say with any kind of tropical cyclone landfall. Someone says, I don't know why, but I think Larry will be Igor 2.0. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, Igor 2010 was also a Cape Verde. It was the most destructive tropical cyclone on record to strike Newfoundland. Originally, I was saying, based on what I was seeing with the models and all the strength and all, I was saying Larry could have been like Lorenzo 2.0. I actually, before Larry underperformed, in my opinion, strength-wise, I actually thought it could have be learned or maybe get up to 155, 160. It didn't, thankfully. Some other people were saying it's looking to be like Igor. And as of right now, that's a pretty fair, reasonable estimate. It's looking to be like Igor. Igor, though, was a much bigger storm. Its gale force winds was 120 miles wide. That was the record in the Atlantic until surpassed by 2 years later by Sandy. Igor did affect Newfoundland as a hurricane force system. I'm not sure if it was tropical or extratropical at this time. It looks to be, well, the 2 points that I'm looking at has extratropical after Newfoundland, and then it has one that's tropical before Newfoundland. I'm not sure, but it went under explosive intensification, which we know Larry did as well. Igor got up to 155. Larry, by our analysis, only peaked at 130. NHC only had it at 125. Igor made landfall. Okay, so it says it was tropical at 85 miles an hour. And that's what they're saying. This could be for. That's what the landfall could be for this. Now, Igor went to the west of Bermuda. It did affect Bermuda. This is supposed to stay to the east of Bermuda, but still go in towards Newfoundland. So you're definitely going to get a hurricane force system in Newfoundland. You're definitely going to get a system that's going to bring rain and wind and surge. So if you're in Newfoundland, I would start preparing now, because you're going to have something knocking on your door by the weekend, whether that would be tropical or extra tropical. We'll have to wait and see what it does. But you're definitely going to get rain, you're going to get wind, you're going to get surge. Is it going to be as bad as Igor? We'll have to wait and see. We will have to wait and see what it does. What Larry does up in Newfoundland. But I would say prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Right now, Larry, it could end up being like Igor up there in Newfoundland. It could not end up like Igor. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yep, indeed. Larry is Igor, but a Cat 3 at a higher longitude and is not so big. I don't know if you mean by that one. Chantu more like 2015 Goni. Almost same track right now, and this might intensify significantly, but that went to Japan. Well, that kind of automatically defeats the purpose of it being similar to a track, now, doesn't it? Is it possible for a hurricane to get strong enough to pass through a front or a trough?
Usually, frontal systems absorb tropical cyclones, so not really. Larry, I saw someone said, wait, so this could hit the U.S.? No, Larry's not gonna hit the U.S. It's gonna hit Newfoundland, which is in Atlantic Canada. However, it is after Labor Day now, so lifeguards are now off the beaches. And this is going to be very dangerous now, because if you decide to go in the waters, which, I mean, if you're in the Northeast, I don't know why you would, because it's been in the 70s and 60s recently. So more if you're in the Southeast. Rip currents and swells is what we're going to see from Larry along the eastern coast of the United States. Rip currents now is what we're going to only get with Larry from the East Coast. And that's going to be the dangerous part, because it's after Labor Day. All the lifeguards are now not in service. Their summer jobs are over. So now if you go in the water, and there is a rip current, unfortunately, guess what? The lifeguards are done. Since it's after Labor Day, you're on your own pretty much. And that's the most dangerous part, is when people go in the water before Memorial Day or after Labor Day, when the lifeguards aren't there and there's a tropical system that causes rip currents. Unfortunately, that's what causes the storms that form before Labor Day. Before Memorial Day and after Labor Day to be deadly if they don't affect the U.S. is because of the rip current threat. So if you're going to the beach this weekend, make sure you're cautious, because when going in the water, because there's going to be no lifeguards. If you get out on a rip current, you have to swim parallel to the shore, and you're going to have to try to do it on your own, because unfortunately there's going to be no lifeguards to come out there to save you.
Another question that we had, does Chantu have the potential to go through multiple eyewall replacement cycles? Definitely likely that it'll probably go through around 1 to 3. I'd probably say 2 is most likely the safest bet with this one. Not the off possibility that it could go through 3 in total. But those are extremely hard to predict, so I really wouldn't say that, I know for sure that that's going to be the case. We'll see what happens. Those are extremely challenging to predict when will happen. It's likely that we'll see one eventually during the course of his life. At least one. It's just a big question on when this is going to be the case. Is Chantu most likely to pass Goni? Absolutely not. Keep in mind, going in with 195 miles an hour, this is 145, and as of right now, there's no explicit forecast for it to actually get that strong. So this better not do so. I hope I don't eat my words later on, but there's next to zero chance of this becoming the next Goni or anything. Update 2 on Chantu, if you're asking when that's going to be, that should be about 12 hours after the last one, so that probably within the next 6 hours is probably when the next one will be coming out. We have another one on Conson coming out before, though. Chantu would definitely go through 1 probably due to the very small eye size, but 2 or 3 is hard to predict. Yep, that is something I can agree with there. Keep in mind we've got 14 minutes left, just under that if you want to count then the on this day product. So if you do want to get in those questions, you've got about 10 to 12 minutes before we do get to the point where we won't be able to answer those until tomorrow's live stream, which of course will be more than likely Nathan hosting that one, of course. But to you guys, what are your personal thoughts on the intensity that Chantu could reach?
I really hope it doesn't get any stronger than it already is.
I'm seeing a lot of people in the public server saying that this is a 5. This is a 5. This is a 5. It's not a 5. I'm going to say that right now. If it keeps strengthening like this, it's going to be knocking on the door of a 5. Force 13 is going 125 knots. For Force 13 purposes, I'm going to agree there. On my personal end, I'm going with 130 knots. As I think the CDO, it's Chantu is definitely is done probably with the shear. It's trying to stabilize its eye and CDO and all that. It's worrying me what I'm seeing with Chantu. I'm worried, and I'm probably going to be, like I said, like you said, your sleep schedule was messed up, Xavier. As I said earlier, mine's messed up. And I'm probably going to be pulling another graveyard shift tonight. I'm afraid by the time I go to sleep tonight, which I'm going to be here for the 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. JTWC advisories, I'm afraid if it keeps strengthening like this, we're going to see a 5. We're not calling it a 5 yet. None of the agencies are calling it a 5. Supposedly China is calling it a 5, but I don't know about that. Someone said that on the public server. I would have to look that up. But if it keeps strengthening like this, I'm worrying we're going to see a 5. Right now, we kept it at 125, which for Force 13 purposes, I agree. I agree with it being 125 knots for Force 13. In my own personal analysis, I'm going with 130. I do not agree with ATCF bringing it down, but I see why they did. I think it's because of the shear that was affecting it from the east, and it caused it to egg out, but now I think it's starting to stabilize, and we're seeing it get stronger. I will mention, with Wikipedia for Chantu, someone said last time you checked it was 155. It never got up to 155. It's always been around 140, 145. So I don't know where that 155 number came in from, but that was probably some griefing done by somebody. But I definitely think it's still 150. Definitely at least minimum still 155, but this is possibly 150. I don't think it's Cat 5 though. I'm not going to agree with if China is calling this Cat 5. I'm not agreeing with what they're saying there. I'm not agreeing with a bunch of people in our public server and in the chat saying I don't think it's Cat 5. It's at minimum 145. At max, it's 150, in my personal opinion. It's close, though. It's 10 miles away at max, 15 miles away at minimum, and what we're going with Force 13 analysis. But it's knocking on the door if it keeps strengthening like this.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of the reason I wish we had Recon in the West Pack. It's like we would probably get more info on this kind of stuff. Jonesy, you've been on top of Recon for Larry. Someone was asking if there's any updates on that.
Okay, so yes, the Recon has come in. They're in the eye right now. They are in the eye right now. We're not going to get an eye drops on before we go off the air, unless we do a little extension, but I think we're going off the air at 30 past regardless. That's what you said, Xavier. I will give a northeast eye wall run right now. I see 96 flight level with 66 SFMRs. And that flight level is 110. So, based on that, that's 110. That would be Cat 2. Based on what I'm seeing with the Recon from 3 quadrants, SFMRs are not there. The flight levels, and there was only a couple of flight levels there, only 3 flight levels at 100. I'm not on the analyst team, but personally, I'm going to make a call saying that Larry is no longer a major. I think at 11 p.m., we're going to get another eye drops on, and we're going to see if they're keeping it at 967 or if we're going to see it come up. I think, though, at the next full advisory on Larry it's 9:20 now, so at 11 p.m., so in an hour and a half, I think we're going to see Larry for the first time in 4 days drop below major hurricane status. I'm making that personal call right now. I based on what I'm seeing from Recon, I do not believe Larry is no longer a major hurricane, and we're just gonna wait on the NHC to confirm or deny that personal analysis from me.
Someone asked whether it was more likely that Chantu goes towards the Philippines or Taiwan. As of right now, it's supposed to go through the middle, but that would take it through the Luzon Strait. So I can't really give an answer to that, considering the fact it's supposed to be going in between. Both areas are in the cone. The entirety of Taiwan is in the cone for Chantu, and the northern end of the Philippines, the extreme northern end, is for Chantu over here, so I can't exactly give a definitive answer. Both regions should be monitoring it regardless, especially considering the fact that it is going to be a bigger system by the time we get to that point. But that is what I can say about this. Will Larry impact Bermuda with tropical storm force winds possible? Yes, that's why they're under a tropical storm watch at this point. After all, Larry is a very ginormous storm and you look at things, so it's definitely in the cards there, even though it's shifted enough east to the point that they're not going to get hurricane force winds. Because I know we were looking at the possibility a few days ago that with all the westward shifts that it could have become a direct bullseye for Bermuda. Thankfully, it's shifted east enough that that is not looking like the case anymore.
Yep, that is definitely a good thing for Bermuda.
I mean, they did get, what, 2 storms last year? 2 direct landfalls, or was it 1?
They had direct landfalls last year?
I know Paulette was one of them. And I know Teddy got close. Those with your last questions, you've only got a very small amount of time left, about 4 minutes before we do. Someone asking, will the Super Cyclone Challenge come back? I'm not sure. That would be a question to ask Nathan, but if we probably do anytime soon, it'll probably be during our event that we have planned at the end of the year. Insert moment when Linda doesn't die. Well, I think Linda is definitely gone by now. Who thinks there will become one of the largest storms in Atlantic's history? Doubtful that it will. It's supposed to get larger, but it's not supposed to be large enough to really be up there in the top 5 or anything. So. It's definitely not going to be Teddy sized, and that was the 4th largest. keep in mind, if you have any questions, please tag us at Force13. That will pop up our name in orange. We are running out of time, so of course, if you don't get those questions asked, you will be having to wait till tomorrow morning. The eye Chantu has a temperature of 14 degrees Celsius, and I ask, how strong do you think the storm will be in 3 to 9 hours? Well, that's a 6-hour time range. 3 hours from now, probably 130 knots, anywhere between 125 and 130. And then 9 hours from now, probably 130 to 135 knots. That's as long as no eyewall replacement cycles happen. If it does happen, it'll likely be stagnating around 125 to 130. So it all depends on what goes on there. I think that the rate of intensification is definitely going to be slowing down at the very least, considering the fact that it is much harder to get such a strong storm to rapidly intensify the way it did. Because, of course, if we had that rate of intensification, we would basically be breaking the known laws of physics in terms of the intensity it would reach. So, thankfully, that's not how things work around here. And we should be seeing intensification slow for that.
Alright, to answer the question, so, Paulette, direct landfall. That was the only direct landfall, but there were 2 other storms that came close. Teddy was 200 miles to the east. Arthur, as extratropical or a remnant low, nearly went directly over Bermuda. Surprisingly. The other one that came close was Edward.
Yes. And of course Teddy was probably a pretty large system by then, so that's kind of...
Yeah, so Teddy, I think... I'm gonna have to go back to you. Actually, wait. I can just click on Teddy. Give me a second, because Igor's on that list with it. Teddy is 4th on largest of gale force winds at 850 miles. So Bermuda definitely did get some impacts from Teddy.
Someone was asking the chances of a Newfoundland landfall. Based off the latest cone, it seems around 55. Does it look like...
Let me bring up the interactive cone real quick. You can get that thought in, Xavier.
Oh, we will be wrapping it up shortly anyways, so I think it's a little bit too late. I already have the interactive version of the cone here, but yeah, that's basically around 55%. Although it looks like the landfall is going to be very close to St. John's, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's very close. If it went up, which that would bring that right front quadrant into St. John's, which is not good. They have the thin line has it going basically due west of it. So yeah, that's a good chance there for Newfoundland landfall. I agree with you there.
Well, with that, that is all the time we have for questions, and it is time that we get to the ending section of things, of course, as we routinely do. Someone did ask where Nathan was. It is about 2 a.m. for him right now, so of course he's asleep. He used to do live events in the evening, but pretty much now that there are people capable, most of his stuff is during the morning and afternoon for him, so he will be back up.
Sorry, yeah, I can clarify. It is 2:30 in the morning where I am right now, and yeah.
Yeah, he will be back tomorrow morning with more live coverage. So of course, thank you to our team that consisted of only 3 people tonight, Christian and Jonesy, and presenting here tonight from our U.S. headquarters in Lincoln, Maryland, Xavier Burns. Thank you to our team for coming despite the shortage of people, but you know what? We are devoted to our coverage, and we do what is necessary. So with that...
It was a pleasure having you.
Okay, that was a little bit of a fail there. But anyways, on this day in September... I forgot to change the date. September 8th, 1987 is the actual date this should have been. Not 1991 and the 7th. I accidentally reused yesterday's for that. But there are 3 typhoons at once active. Gerald and Holly were Category 3. Fredo was a Category 2 on its way to becoming a Category 3. There was Tropical Depression 10L that would eventually become Dennis. And Tropical Storm Cindy just chilling up there in the open Atlantic. So 5 storms active, just the wrong day that I have this listed as. But regardless, it was on September 8th. Well, here we are. The next name of the Atlantic is Mindy, followed by Nicholas still. We could be seeing Mindy if 91L develops. In the Eastern Pacific, we're about to get Olaf, followed by Pamela. And in the Central Pacific, while the Simpsons can accurately predict future events, they cannot accurately predict when Hone will form. In the Western Pacific, the next two names now are Diantmu followed by Mindul, and in the North Indian Ocean, we're looking out for Gulov and Shaheen. Those two names we're probably not going to be seeing for quite some time. And in the Southern Hemisphere, specifically the Southwestern Indian Ocean, we're looking out for Anna and Bat Sea. In the Australian region, we're looking out for Patty and Ruby. And in the South Pacific, we're looking out for Cody. We'll be back for another Tropical Weather Bulletin. Won't be done by me this time, tomorrow night.